Welcome back to Boundless 2021. I'm very excited to introduce the next session. If you're an entrepreneur, a founder, or you hope to be one someday, you came to the right place. So let's get some introductions out of the way. Michael Hughes is the Chief Commercial and Revenue Officer for ChargePoint, where he leads global sales, mobility ecosystem relationships, and business development functions for a company that is building the world's largest and most open electric vehicle charging network. On the other side of the screen, we have serial entrepreneur and Nutshell co-founder Guy Suter, who has been starting technology companies since his freshman year in college and is currently the CEO of a soon-to-be-announced startup that's focusing on the move to distributed work and how people can make the most of it. Michael and Guy met in 2009 when they were both in leadership positions at Barracuda Networks. Since then, they've invested in, advised, or personally launched over a dozen tech companies. And they're here today to discuss some of the lessons they've learned along the way from those experiences. So without further ado, I'm thrilled to welcome to the Boundless virtual stage, Michael Hughes and Guy Suter. Thanks you both for being here, gentlemen.
Good morning. Thank you.
Great. So let's start at the beginning. Why entrepreneurship? When did you know that building and founding companies was your calling? Guy, we can start with you.
Always. I think, basically even back in school, didn't really feel like I fit in the normal set of rules, I guess. And when I went out and got my real job, didn't like the taste of kind of traditional corporate culture. And growing up, my parents owned a Dairy Queen, so I was kind of exposed to ownership mentality and working hard and building something from a very young age. And so I think that coupled with kind of an impatience for seeing things that maybe are being held back or could be better than they currently are was the perfect intersection for saying I'm gonna go do whatever I want and invent something and be my own boss, I guess.
Right, Michael. Same question. What was your early path to entrepreneurship? How did you get into it?
Yeah, mine's a real juxtaposition to Guy's. I mean, unlike Guy, I was raised by an IBM salesman that ran, a region in the Midwest, and we were a very traditional family. White shirt, blue suit, red tie, the whole thing. And I kind of went along my way, and a little bit similar to Guy. Went to my first job and did some things and had some success, enjoyed parts of it, but, also saw that there are other parts that, I didn't enjoy so much. And then, to be honest, I've worked for companies. I've founded some, but also worked for others. And I find there's a place in business that's interesting to me where you're building things and growing things. That can be in a company that I find and have done that, and that's fun, but can also be in a company that exists. I think for me, it's really a matter of you're in a position to build something, whether that's from the ground up or from early on. That's the fun part. And, having seen companies that exist, been a part of companies where you're kind of moving it down the road a little bit, keeping things going, managing the business, that's not really that much fun. But building something, when you see it being shaped, it being formed, making strategic decisions about what business you're going to be in, how you're going to monetize, what the customers care about, and really sort of the detective work involved in that. That's really been the fun part. And so I've found it in sort of medium-sized companies. I found it in startup companies. But when they get too big and then you get into the management role, it's a little bit less fun.
I hear you. So how did you both land at Barracuda? And, just take me to how you got to that point, and what's the biggest lesson you learned there? And I guess also what you learned from just meeting each other and being in each other's orbits. Michael, we can stay with you.
The good old days. Guy and I had a lot of fun. We had a ton of fun working together. I actually came to the company, again, his story will be very different than mine. I came to the company I had been in Europe for a company asked me to run European sales. And then I came back, and to be honest, I looked around, and of the 20 jobs I looked at, 18 were in Silicon Valley. So I'm like, well, I have to go to Silicon Valley. It really wasn't much choice. That might be different going forward. We'll see. But at the time I said I had to come to Silicon Valley. I did, went to work for a company. We sold that company. And then quite literally, met the CFO in a pub in here in Los Gatos, California, and just started a dialogue. And given that I had sort of fixed a company in Europe, and that was the problems at Barracuda, I was in the office of the CEO the next morning having a conversation about fixing his problems in Europe. So a little bit of a lesson in there that is, whatever your resume says you are, that's what you are, right? Like, hey, this guy fixes Europe. He's the American that speaks European. Perfect. Let's go have him do it again for us. And so I started there and effectively came in as a consultant, did about 6 weeks of work, reported back, and they said, well, why don't you go fix it? And so ran Europe for a while and then ran worldwide sales thereafter. So lots of fun in the process, but my way of getting to Barracuda was, just an interesting tale because, I didn't design to say, hey, I want to go back and run Europe. But when your resume says that's what you can do, that's what people think you can do.
Interesting.
So why don't we do that in two parts, and then I'll come back to the lessons learned, because I think that'll dovetail to some of the other stuff. And let Guy respond to how he got to Barracuda.
Yeah, I want to say, was that 2009, Michael, when you joined Barracuda? Is that right? That sounds right.
Yeah, right around maybe 8.
As you were talking, I was kind of reflecting. I just now remembered, kind of the story of the first time I heard your name. And I think it was either a text message or a phone call from Dean, the CEO at Barracuda, had said, we're bringing this guy in. He's going to really help sell the backup product. He's got, a lot of experience in Europe and storage and so on. And you got to meet him right away. And I was in Canada on vacation with my family at the time. And literally what I was doing when I got the call, and I remember it because I was closing on buying nutshell.com at the same exact time. So it really is interesting, 10 or so years later to be sitting here, at a Nutshell conference talking to you about when we first met and joining Barracuda. It feels like there's like an inception moment going on a little bit. So I joined Barracuda just slightly ahead of that, right at the end of 2008. We had a data backup company called BitLeap, not Bitly, BitLeap, and we did a small business data backup. So we were the first Linux-based backup appliance. People would put it on their network. We'd back up, all their servers and Exchange server, and then ship it off to the cloud in multiple sites that we totally built and managed ourselves. This was long before AWS or Google's cloud or anything like that. So we joined Barracuda via acquisition, and we were a small company, less than 20 people. When we on our first day in the door, we were the smallest revenue line business at Barracuda, and so my two co-founders and I, felt like it was a great place for us to learn. So we kind of dug into, similar to Michael talking about, there was just so much opportunity to build inside a bigger company with more resources. We had this product and there was this great channel at Barracuda. And so we saw that as an opportunity to really learn on the job and have some great mentors that could help us understand how to scale a business beyond anything that we had done before. And timing wise, it was pretty interesting too. It was, our acquisition, I think, closed about a week before the 2008 crash. So it was a very fortuitous timed, M&A opportunity for us.
Yeah. And do you remember some of the biggest lessons you learned during your stint at Barracuda?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest one, I'll start, for me, goes directly to just having a really clear purpose in terms of who you serve, who your customer is. And it took me a while to sort of realize exactly what that was at Barracuda, but it clicked for me. Again, I'll mention Dean Draco, one of the founders and the CEO. At the time, he was at a STEP seminar and he got up, which we'll talk about those, I'm sure. It was things we did all over the country. More Maggiano dinners than anyone could possibly be subjected to, where we would go and meet customers in person, something that's pretty hard to do right now. But, usually would be 20, 40 people in the room. And Dean got up in front of this group and he said very clearly, he said, the people that buy our products, they're all security, data backup kind of products, are IT managers. And the IT manager in a company has a tremendous amount of responsibility, but is also somebody that, it's a pretty thankless job. If everything's working, everybody else is going about their business, doing their thing, not really paying attention to you. The only time anybody pays attention to you is when something breaks. And so it's very stressful. It's pretty thankless. And he said, that's why Barracuda Networks exist, to celebrate that person and to make products that make their life easier. And that was a click for me. It was like, that's what it takes to make a company, having that very clear purpose, understanding who your customer is and how to put yourself in their position. That's what really separates, I think, any successful company.
Interesting.
Well, that's good.
Michael, for you, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is really useful because I think for me, the thing I'd say a lot these days is the customer is always the hero in the story. If not, you're telling the wrong story, right? And as marketers and salespeople and business leaders, we all want to talk about how great our stuff is or what we're doing or how important it is. If it's all not centered around here's what it can do for you, the customer, it's an epic fail. And I think I certainly saw a lot of that at Barracuda, learned that, right? I mean, the customer profile for us was, he had 10 jobs to do. So if you could make it easier for him, that was a win. And so we focused on making it easier, making the decision to buy our stuff easier, making it easier to manage, making it easier for him in life. And so I think that was really, again, a mission that really made sense for us that we could leverage to other markets. And so I think I learned a lot from that. I think the other thing I learned, when Guy and I were there, Guy had effectively the hot product, and I don't want to go all bromance on us through this conversation, but it was clear to me that for me and the company to be successful, I needed to ride that train. And he was fully committed. He had a team of fully committed people, right? He mentions these seminars we did. We literally rented a bus, drove across the country. Some of us lived on the bus, town to town, a lunch at Maggiano's with a commercial event in order to enable customers to learn about what we were doing. But in effect, it was all in. Like, let's go find a way. Let's tell the story any way we can. Let's get the word out. He was fully committed. Members of his team were fully committed. And for me, at the time, where in the role I was in, I had to choose between spending time on this product or spending time on that product. Product folks come to the sales team and say, "Hey, look, talk about my stuff." I had a fully committed partner, right, and a team that surrounded him that said, "Let's go." And that makes for a lot. So if there's a lesson in there for me, it's sorting out the sort of suits, right? Like, I'm willing to do what it takes. I got to make my boss look good. I got to look good, blah, blah, blah. There's somebody who actually wants to get something done. And as soon as you align with people that want to get stuff done, first of all, it's a ton more fun. Secondly, you're focused on the right set of things. And third, you end up getting a really good result. So to me, there's a big lesson from the Barracuda days in finding the people that were going to move the ball forward and were fully committed to the task, and then aligning around that. And in fact, Guy, we turned the company in some form from an email security company into email and data protection, where it became, the fuel for all of our growth for many years, which was a really powerful thing, but really a testament to the energy and focus of your team.
Well, let's move on to the topic of startups. Obviously, something you both have a ton of experience in both as founders and investors. In your opinion, what do successful startups have in common? What are the required elements? And we can start with you, Guy.
Well, I mean, I think building on that, it's not always, it's not always easy, right? So you've got to have 100% commitment. Sometimes people talk about 20-hour days and that sort of thing. I'm of the opinion that if you don't have balance and you don't have, the ability to do something sustainable for a long period of time, you're not going to get very far. And so what I'm really talking about is like, it has to be super personal. Like, you have to be passionate about it. It has to be the thing that you're thinking about all the time. You're probably thinking about it in the shower. It's not even about clocking hours as much as it's not a job, right? And so I think that that's one thing that sort of has to be there. And it doesn't mean you're going to be successful. I've had my own startup where I was fully committed and very passionate about it and didn't get there. So even in the best case scenario, it is a really hard thing to do, to start a new company from scratch and to get it to a point of success. And so I think being realistic about it's not going to be, some story that you can package up in a 45-minute special or something. The road is not straight. There's lots of turns and twists and setbacks that you don't expect, and so you've got to have the wherewithal to get through that. And there's no seminal moment in the journey of any company. There's no one thing. You get funded by an investor, or you IPO and then you're done. There is no such thing as that. Running a business and serving customers is hard, and the ball is always moving. The future is always coming. The world is always changing, and so you really have to love it, I think. Otherwise, why would you do it? I guess is the bottom line for me.
Michael, what would you add to that? Something foundational that a successful startup has to have in common.
Yeah, I think it all starts with team, right? At the most important level, people you trust, people who are egoless, and people who have diverse skills, right? And I look at the smaller the team, the better, to be honest, right? And then there's less, passing of information and getting everybody aligned and all that kind of stuff. But in effect, smart, egoless people with diverse skills is the most important, bar none, important thing, right? Yeah. And so in every team that I've seen succeed, there's complete trust. I'm good at this thing, you're good at that thing, see you later, let's go. And I've seen it fall apart, right? I had a developer in a startup that had developed most of the products that we had built. He lost trust with the market-facing guy, the guy leading the sales and marketing effort, and stopped believing what he said. And in effect, the whole thing fell apart, right? Like, he stopped building what the market was telling us we needed. And as a result, we were falling behind, had to move him out. He was a founder. Had to move him out and then go do new stuff. So egoless and trust and really smart people with diverse skills. That's the foundational piece that's really important. And then I would just say, as Guy said, it's a million little things. It's not one thing along the way. It's not like, oh, hey, great, we're success. Woo. It is a million little things. And I think listening to and adjusting to those elements, the market moving, what customers are saying, whatever the case might be, is really important. And I think when folks stop listening because they think they've got it right, or because they know the answers, that's a real dangerous place.
Gotcha. Well, Michael, I want to stick with you for just a second, because the next thing I wanted to ask was common mistakes that inexperienced founders make. Sort of the traits that the successful startups have in common. What are some of the common roadblocks that you might, if you're starting your first or second business, that you might run into? And you mentioned lack of trust. Is that the big one that inexperienced founders get caught up in? What's a major landmine to avoid? Trust is so hard, right? Like, we're human beings. We're all broken. We've got, you interpret things a certain way. Yeah. So staying really close to that is really important. And a key to that is really open communication, right? It sounds so trite and simple, and I get it, but like, most folks that I run into are very uncomfortable having the formative conversation around what we're trying to accomplish, or hey, look, I noticed this, tell me more about it. Or this is what I'm seeing, help me understand it. So I think trust is built every day from holding to those principles and staying in communication. I mentioned earlier continuing to listen. And Guy, I don't know if you remember this, but there's a point in time, and this is sort of boring for most people, but I'll be really quick about it, where email was shifting from on-premises to in the cloud, right? We were all going to Office 365, which we're all on now. And I was having a hard time getting people to listen to me that was happening. Because, hey, look, we know this business, we got this business, it turns money in, it's a beautiful thing. And I had this moment that I will never forget the rest of my life, in which we brought all of our partners in. We had a conference and we asked our partners, hey, how many of you are doing stuff? And I set up the question, admittedly, how many of you are doing stuff around Office 365? And every hand in the room went up. And every jaw of an executive at Barracuda dropped to the table, because they're like, oh, I've been hearing this, but I didn't know this. And so I think the lesson for me is
listen to the customer, right? What they're paying attention to, how things are moving for them, how the sands have shifted for them, will tell you everything about what's happening in the marketplace. And the minute you think you've got it or you're kind of there, you're pretty much dead. And I think I learned a ton from that moment. And it wasn't really, I took it on myself. It's my mistake. What I didn't do was put that data in front of the executive team that was making those decisions about what products to build. I needed to do that. That was my job. I'm the voice of the customer. And so from that moment forward, I take it as my, the mantle of responsibility to say, the customer needs to be heard in an organization, and it's my job, no one else's, to make sure that happens.
Yeah. Guy, from your own observation, common landmines for inexperienced founders, what are the most common mistakes that you see?
Well, I mean, I think it goes back to the team observations that Michael was making. The most common ones I see are just petty, people not getting along, and it just destroys everything instantly. And so, I think that surround yourself with people that you want to spend a lot of time with, and that you want to make a lot of allowances for, because we all are human and nobody's perfect, and we all have our idiosyncrasies that need to be understood and accepted. I'm very fortunate, we didn't realize this until years into Barracuda, that my co-founding team, Lindsay and Ian, are technical co-founders that I've been in business with, multiple businesses for decades now, have stayed close and really continue to enjoy working together through both successes and failures. And that's really rare. And it's really rare because it's hard to spend that much time and put that much at risk and have, continue to be in the same place through wins and losses. And so I think for an early team, that hasn't done it, really focus on each other. Make a little bit more time, I'd say, to spend time together, really understand, not eliminating assumptions, really understand why everybody's there, what they're there for, being on the same page. That is worth the investment 1,000 times over. Take the time to. Sometimes it feels like not working, or sometimes it feels like not that important. Take the time out to do those things.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And address it now. Don't let it fester.
That's right. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, because it builds up over time, and then you get to a place where it's not recoverable. And then two other quick ones. I think for people that haven't done it a whole lot, putting too much emphasis on investment. Investment just makes the hurdle even higher for you. And if you don't have the clear traction and the clear trajectory, to clear that hurdle, now you've put yourself into like a superhero mode where like you've got to have a miracle, between, the dollars coming in and the dollars running out to be able to clear that hurdle. And I've been in that position. It is super stressful, and it's completely preventable and totally self-inflicted. So stop thinking so much about getting, I get it that we have to have funding and people need to be paid and everything, but, grow in a reasonable way. We've been talking about this a lot at Nutshell, right? Like reasonable, responsible growth is so much more powerful than getting a big check from an investor, and then they'll want you to spend it all and you might not get there. And then the last one that I've got is actually for the serial entrepreneurs, right? Where I see actually probably more mistakes than the people doing it the first time, which is thinking all the answers. And the worst one that I'm guilty of is remembering the pain that's recent from your success when things were going well and you were scaling, and doing a bunch of stuff way too early to make sure you don't have to go through that pain again. Because if you focus on those things, you might not even get to the place where you have to. And so, skipping steps is a big one for serial entrepreneurs. They have to kind of reset themselves and say, okay, no, we're doing this one step at a time.
Right. Well, let's stick with you for a second, Guy, because I think this kind of dovetails into the next question. A lot of people had a very rough year in 2020. And, for some people, it wasn't really the best time to start a business. The landscape is different. We hope things will return to normal in the near future, but there's still a lot of, we're still unsure about a lot of things. So what advice would you give to a new entrepreneur trying to launch and grow a business in 2021?
Well, first of all, I believe that this is the best time to start to do a startup in our lifetime, and probably will be the best time looking backwards. So I don't know that there's ever going to be a better time to start a business. And I, recognizing that comes with all kinds of incredible challenges. We're talking about team. How do you put together a team when you can't even meet people in person? You're trying to build a team and build a founder team. People have financial hardships and everything else. But the world is upside down. It's going to turn back. We know this, right? And it's not going to look like it did before. There is no such thing as going back to exactly what the world was in January 2020. The world is going to be vastly different, right, from what it was, and it's going to be vastly different from what it is. And the amount of disruption and opportunity that creates. And we're also sort of all in this zone where we've got to be, pretty isolated and pretty heads down. That's a great time to be inventing and to be innovative. So I think my message is one of just optimism and encouragement. It's really, really hard. I kind of have this motto that I've picked up, in the last couple of years, because I even wrote a blog article. I got in a really, overextended place, right? And had to clean up kind of everything that I had going on. And, I kind of came to this 3-part thing, which is like, first, recognize and understand reality. What is the reality around me? What's my ability to influence it? Secondly, really be clear about your requirements. Like, what is it that you need, whether that's financially or emotionally? Just have a very clear understanding of what you need, and then don't compromise on those. Find a way to make sure your requirements are met, and then focus on the everything that you need to get to a place where every day what you're doing, you're enjoying doing it, enjoying the journey, not the destination, not about the end result, but you're actually in a place working with people, working on a problem that you find interesting and fun to spend time on.
Yeah, that's great advice. Michael, do you agree with that sort of bullish take on 2021 being a great time to start a business? And what would you tell a new entrepreneur trying to get something off the ground right now this year?
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree, right? Anytime there's disruption, anytime there's change, there's opportunity. It's a period of massive change, right? Like, the problems I'm trying to solve today running a business are completely different than they were from a tech perspective, from where they were a few months ago, right? How do I engage employees? How do I run conference calls? I'm trying to plan a sales kickoff guy, and I'm trying to figure out how to get that to be an interesting event that people want to attend, that doesn't feel like another Zoom call. How do you monitor, right? There's a million things that just the way we're working today has changed, and all of those are opportunities. So I think that's the first piece. The second piece is, because we're all working from home, it's certainly a great opportunity to get people to focus on something and be successful building it. And then the money will come later, right? The worst time to raise money is when it's all hot and everybody's flying. It's all the money's flowing in, right? Then hard time getting attention. I think this is a great time to raise money, build a business, and go. My advice would be, and I've been super lucky and blessed, but and I've been thinking about this a little bit lately. I left Barracuda 2.5 years ago for good reasons. The company was at a transition, and the best place for me was to give it a turn and give other folks a chance to lead. And I went into this, Lord knows, completely orthogonal charging business, right? So we provide infrastructure for electric vehicles. And I did it not because I'm super smart, as Guy would tell you, I'm marginally smart, but it was obvious, right? This is going to happen. 2.5 years ago was a little bit less obvious, let's be clear. But so my message to the entrepreneurs is go where the gold is, right? Like, this is not rocket science, right? But like, in effect, if you're trying to solve a little problem, it better become a really big problem down the road, or it's not worth solving. And if you do find that problem that's going to become a big problem, and you're going to find a unique way to solve it, then stay committed to that cause, because it will take you there. And everything will try to take you off the path. An early customer that says we should go this way, a big customer that says I want you to spend all time on this. if you're solving a problem that will be big in the future, you absolutely should stick to that knitting and then make sure that you stay on that path. But pick a big problem. Small problems don't pay off like you'd like them to, and then they're generally temporary, right? It's a problem that gets over and then solved in another way. So I go where the gold is.
For sure. Well, it's really fortunate to have you guys here together today because you're both focusing on companies that are in very different stages of life cycle this year. And I just want to talk more about what you guys specifically are working on this year. Michael, we can start with you. We've mentioned ChargePoint. Tell me a little more about that business. Who the buyers are. What stage in your growth are you at? Kind of give us a little window into your world right now.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, happy to do it. So ChargePoint, as vehicles electrify, and this is all kinds of vehicles, trucks, buses, delivery vehicles, the cars we drive, all of that, Uber, Lyft, anything. As they electrify, of course, you need infrastructure to support them getting the fuel that they need. We want to be the fueling network of the future. So we all think of gas stations, and that's where you fuel. In an electric world, we'll need like 10% of those gas stations, right? It just changes, right? I'm charging right now in front of my house. When I go to the office, I charge at the office. When I go to the mall or the stadium, I charge there. If I'm driving somewhere far away, in Michigan, we put in fast charging stations and all kinds of fun places that get you up north and other things. So in effect, that's what we're trying to build, the network that allows people to fuel where they are. And it's been a really fun business. So fleets are electrifying, which is really an important piece. So FedEx, UPS, Amazon, think of those folks, and all of the plumbers and electricians and everybody else will electrify. So that's happening very quickly. And so what's interesting, so fun business, growing really fast. The gold is definitely there. It's hard though. We have to break ground, get permits, run power. Things are regulated in different ways. How utilities operate in different geographies is very different. We have to affect regulation at the federal level, right? So I've really enjoyed the business, but it is fascinating how heavy the business is, right? We've got a dozen folks working in the policy side, a dozen folks working in the utility side, and then tons of people building the channel in order to enable the business. So it's been a lesson along the way of how do you fund and enable these things, and in the meantime, it's been in the go-to-market side of things, we generally talk about it's either a vitamin or it's an aspirin. Are you selling a vitamin or an aspirin? It's really good to sell an aspirin because that means somebody's got pain and you can solve it. We've been selling a vitamin for a while. It's turning into an aspirin in California, right? In particular. So like half the EVs are here. So if you're an employer and you don't have charging at your office, you're kind of a dinosaur, right? You have to have charging at your office. And so as this business goes from a vitamin, hey, I want to provide charging for my employees or at my mall, to an aspirin, I must in order to compete for employees, for talent, for customers. The business will get more and more fun over the next few years. But really interesting business, really enjoy it. And I think for the first time in my life, I enjoy the fact that there's a mission-driven attachment to it. No offense, I love solving IT security problems and IT data protection problems, but it's also really fun knowing that what we're doing every day does contribute to a greater good, which is clean air and an environment, a world that will be around for a little while, things like that. So that part of it's really exciting and gives you a good feeling when you put your head on the pillow.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm going to remember that vitamin versus aspirin thing too. I'll kick this to Guy because, we said earlier, this is a yet unnamed company. We're in the early stages. Tell us a little about what you're working on, because all I know is you're also working on approaching a pretty big problem, as it were.
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, and for the record, Michael's more than just a little bit smart. And I think for anybody on the call, what I've always appreciated about you is focusing your focus on understanding on the why. Not every sales leader out there spends as much effort and time thinking about the why and putting themselves kind of in the market, in the position of the customer. And I think it's just a tremendous model to put out there for people to think about. It's not always about the next purchase order. It's not always about quota. Those things will take care of themselves if the underlying why we're doing this makes sense. And so, yeah, I think that's just great. That's really where I've been spending my energy here for the last year or so. So we've pulled together, our team, so we've got Lindsay and Ian, of course, that I've been starting businesses with for a long time, but we've expanded that. Some other Barracuda alumni, Steve Powell, who was my original boss, is on our group, and Michael Peroni and Kristen. I don't know if you know Kristen DeBerti, formerly Barnes, is working with us, Michael. So we've got this kind of ragtag team of Barracuda alumni operating on a shoestring budget, saying, hey, let's go find a really big problem that we can build a great product around and solve for people and enjoy doing. And that kind of came together right before the pandemic. And so the world delivered us a really big problem. And we just kind of had to sit back and say, okay, well, where can we help? And we spent, kind of the better part of this past year and just doing market research, just talking to people. We don't have a product, we don't have customers, we don't have a company, we don't have investors. So we've basically just been calling hundreds of people and talking to them about their experience, working remotely, moving to a distributed team, what that's going to look like in the future. Are they going back to the office? How are they hiring now? Where are the problems? Michael mentioned employee engagement. Where are the pain points associated with this massive disruption and where we're headed? Because I really believe, the old kind of traditional, everybody goes to the same place from 9 to 5 is gone forever. And it doesn't mean we won't be going back to offices and using, time together in person, but I think we invented that in the Industrial Revolution when we had factories. We invented that when everybody had to go to one place to be part of, the assembly line and be part of that manufacturing process. Shift work was really, really important. Consistency and everybody doing their job exactly the same way was super important. We've been seeing this trend for years in the knowledge economy and the knowledge worker space, whether it's gig economy or remote working. Companies like GitLab that have been doing it for years, that there is potential opportunity to tap into by recognizing that in a knowledge worker economy, people are different and their energy comes from different things. Their working styles are different. Some people like to get up super early in the morning. Some people like to work super late. And when you back this out and you look at even a small company, even just a couple dozen people, and you say, okay, we've got a couple dozen people. Some people need a lot of, individual flow focus time. Some people need a lot of collaboration time. They're in different time zones. They have different personal requirements at home. They have doctor's appointments. All this stuff is flowing in and out of our lives every day. And you say, well, how is the person that is managing all of that going to be able to be fully self-directed with Slack coming at us all the time and email coming at us all the time and meeting schedules, conference calls, Zoom, everything else, and your functional requirements? What kind of tools do we have to manage our energy and make sure that we're putting together kind of our best working style and lifestyle around it and have balance around that? I've been doing a lot of things manually to understand that, in terms of like really putting up boundaries around where my time is spent, making sure I exercise every day, things that I never was honestly very good at and didn't have as much access to in the office every day. And then thinking about how can we turn that into an app that can help people, meet them where they're at, understand where those pain points are for people, make it really easy and even fun to be a little bit more intentional about the time we spend and where we spend it and who we spend it with. And then when you bounce that up to a company, you can imagine a team, if you could just spread the awareness, Ben, if you knew that Jack didn't like early morning appointments, you would just avoid them, right? And if you saw that, Rebecca was low on energy today, maybe it's not a good time to hit her up with a new thing, right? And so if we had that awareness across our teams, we could be even mightier, right? So that's a little bit behind the curtain. It's not necessarily stealth mode or anything, but we want to get the app to the place where we think we can really learn from users. So first step has been just learning from people, what's going on. Second step, build the first kind of minimally valuable product. And third step will be get it out there and see if it helps people.
Wonderful. Just quick follow-up for you, Guy, on that note. Even though the product hasn't launched yet, it's still in the garage stage. What similarities do you see in terms of your priorities? What do you have in common with a company like ChargePoint, who's just a couple steps ahead in that sort of life cycle? How is the focus similar?
Well, I mean, I appreciate what Michael said about kind of a mission and having something that's altruistic and feels good at the end of the day. That's important to me and something that, I've really been looking for as we've been trying to identify where we're going to spend our time, because life is short and you want to do something that you feel proud of and feel like is beneficial. And I think for us, thinking about the empowerment that's going on right now with employees and their ability to have a little bit more autonomy, have a little bit more control over what kind of life they want to live, where they want to live. That's very exciting to me. And so building something that really honors that and really, says, hey, it's not like management and employees are pitted against each other. Like they're all on the same team. We want our companies to do well, right? And so, looking at that as this is a great opportunity to help people be do their best work of their lives and meet their potential, and also have more fun and enjoy it more while doing it. That definitely gets my heart pumping. Likewise, I mean, I'm just a futurist. I'm bent on I like the idea that we're moving from one way of how people work and do productive things to the next more appropriate one for kind of just where things are going, where technology is taking us. And I think that's super similar when it comes to electrifying, the infrastructure in our transportation, and, realizing that there is more than enough energy on Earth for us to get without destroying, the atmosphere and making people sick by breathing bad air and everything. I think that it's the excitement towards the future. I think that's the main similarity that I see.
Right. And Michael, being at a little more established company, this is a growth-focused conference, so I want to talk about growth for a second. What does ideal growth look like for ChargePoint this year, and what's the most important behavior that you think will help you get there?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so I would just say, so there's a few things. Growth for us, we've been a derivative of cars hitting the road that are electric, right? More cars hit the road that are electric, more trucks hit the road that are electric. You need more charging infrastructure. We're in a pretty good spot from a market share position. So we want to track against that. The good news is all the auto companies and all the truck companies are building electric vehicles that'll hit the road. So, the opportunity for our technology and our capabilities tracks north. So, so I think, we're out there. We think the next couple of years, and this is public, we're in the process of becoming a public company, but, we're hundreds of millions of dollars, and in the course of the next few years, certainly will be in the billions of dollars as a company. And that really just tracks with the electric vehicles. So I'm hoping we can grow faster than the market. That's my expectation. The market looks to be growing somewhere between 40 and 60% in the coming year. So we want to grow faster than that. But there's a bunch of places it could grow that maybe we're not as well positioned, or places that it should grow that we are very well positioned. So we're going to manage to that. So door slam. So we track it. We track it every week and every day. At the end of it, I think what I look for in the team, and when we look at this year, it's find things that scale and do them repeatedly, right? So find the customer situation that fits well for us and do it repeatedly. You have to experiment in a number of different places to figure out what that thing is. But when you see it, you know it, and repeat it. And so for those situations, it's, Katie bar the door, we're going for it. Let's go repeat it 100 times. And the bulk of the sales team focuses on that. And then the other part of what I have to do is then find out the other next use cases and the other set of requirements that are forthcoming, and then shape that in a way that becomes scalable and repeatable and so forth. So, I think there's a nice sustainable business in what we can see and what we can scale and what we can repeat. And then over the course of the next year, there are major pieces of the business that I have to find a way to help shape into a place that they are that same repeatability. It will probably take longer than a year to do that, but those are the challenges I've got. And so I think, it's going to be a fun year, still figuring out what the problem is in some cases, and then executing against the problem in other cases, which is good. Nice combo.
Well, we're just about at 45 minutes here, so I'm just going to ask one last question to both of you. There are going to be business owners watching this who have established companies that aren't perhaps growing as much as they used to. So what I want to know is, what are some growth tactics that you've both used as startup leaders that could apply to a business at any life stage? And Michael, if you don't mind, we can start with you.
Yeah, I love it. And this is actually a Barracuda lesson, right? If the technology has reached a point where, or the capability or whatever you're producing has reached a point of some degree of stasis, innovating on business model is also one alternative, right? So whether that's going to a rental model as a service model, maybe changing the way the customer pays for it, maybe changing what's included. So I think oftentimes we get caught up in a place where we are focused on, hey, we have this thing that somebody parts with money for in this fashion. That may also be the thing that limits you from thinking about the next thing or a way to reshape it. And so I think Barracuda did an amazing job of, frankly, dominating the small medium business marketplace by thinking about the model differently and packaging the offering differently. And I think that's an opportunity for somebody who's in a state where, hey, we've gotten it out there, we're having success, but it's not growing like we'd like it to. You can't change what you've got as easily as you can change how you package and sell that to customers.
Good point. Guy, same question for you. Growth tactics that have worked personally for you that you think could apply to a business in any life cycle, any stage in their life cycle?
Yeah, I mean, it's best time to plant a tree 10 years ago, second best time today, kind of thing. I think what I have observed in the companies I've been part of is, it when the thing that you're trying to do to grow faster is starting to take more energy than it's worth. And I think a lot of times we get trapped into those cycles that Michael was talking about of just, this is the way we do it. Maybe the example is PPC, pay-per-click, Google AdWords. This is the way we do it. This is the way we grow. Throw more money at it. They're getting more expensive. Just keep doing it, right? And I think if you take a step back, it's pretty easy for anyone to say, where are the rocks that I'm squeezing really hard and I'm just not getting that much more out of? And if I take all that attention and that energy that I'm putting into those categories of things that you're getting diminishing returns out of relative to the energy you put in, you put that energy into one of these other things that might be disrupting your business model. It might be launching a new product, like we're doing at Nutshell, and thinking about your customers. What are they going to value? Where are they currently valuing what I have to offer? What more or differently can I do for them that they'll value even more? And what's it going to take to get there? And sometimes that can be a long road. It can be, building a whole new thing, from bottoms up. Sometimes it can be scary because it's changing your business model in a way that can can put your current business at risk with some cannibalization or something. Apple's famous for doing this, right? But I think that just taking that moment of pause and saying, where am I putting way too much energy and not getting the results out? And first thing I'm going to do is stop doing that so that I can free up some mental energy to think about creatively other things that I could be doing and being willing to take risks. One of the things that I loved about Barracuda and certainly my partnership with Michael too, is that we try stuff and it often didn't work out. Probably more often than it didn't work out, and that was okay. And I loved going to work and having a group of people around me that was willing to say, yes, let's go try this new way of doing things, a new way of doing business, and see if it works. And then be equally willing to say, okay, no, we're going to back off of that and try the next thing. So having that curiosity and experimenting and trying things, and yeah, just not getting too comfortable.
That's great. Well, that's all the time we have. Michael Hughes, Guy Suter, thanks so much to both of you. And thanks to you all for watching. Don't go anywhere. There are more great Boundless sessions after this.